Hi, my name is Dr. Lara Salyer. Welcome to Right Brain Rescue Podcast, where we have interviews that inspire, invigorate, and ignite your own creative flow. And my mission is to elevate creativity as the sixth vital sign. It is important. It is essential to everyone's well-being. Here, I will examine the aspects of flow state as the secret to building your most vivacious and vibrant life, and it's accessible to everyone. We talk about neuroscience, functional medicine, and positive psychology, so you can tap into your own creativity and find your own unique recipe. And today's guest is John Kennedy. He is a neuroplastician and the founder of Combat Brain Training. Thank you so much for joining us, John.
Sure, Lara. I'm very excited to be here.
Yeah, so excited you're here. Can you tell me a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So I'll try to condense it. But basically, my background was process reengineering. I did very large projects for very large companies. And probably one your audience might be aware of, if they're old enough, is Y2K. That was, of course, the world was going to crash, right? So
of course.
I managed the largest Y2K transition for Motorola. So we had people all over the world and 20 sites and thousands of people. And so the way that had to be successful was relying on process, right? We had to come up with very clearly defined processes that people could follow regardless of what happened. And that was kind of my background in consulting. And so I actually applied that methodology to all different types of businesses and situations. And then in 2007, my brother came back from Iraq, where he was serving in the Army, and said, IEDs, improvised explosive devices, are killing us over there. Can you help? And of course, my younger brother, my hero, so what can we do? So I really dove into this, did a lot of research, talked my way into an event out in California at 29 Palms, which is the Marine's largest training base. It's called Industry Awareness Day. Basically, the goal was to get any contractor to spend the weekend, and they would show all kinds of information about IEDs to us. I mean, they scared the crap out of us. They blew stuff up.
I bet.
And so the goal was to come up with creative ideas or innovative ideas that could help. And the thing that kept coming back to me, it really struck me, was when I talked to guys who had survived IED blasts, they kept saying something like, I started to go down this one alley or this one street, and something told me that something was wrong. And I went a different way, and the guy behind me got blown up. So why does one person with the same information make a decision that saved his life, and the other guy in the same situation, similar training, make a different decision? And so I really looked into this, and if your audience has read Malcolm Gladwell's book, Blink, that's
love it. I was just going to say that. Yeah.
That's exactly what he describes there. He calls it thin slicing. So why? So my hypothesis was, if we could apply a process reengineering methodology to the brain and make the brain more efficient, it would be faster, would process more unconsciously, like get into that flow state, and we could probably save lives. So I was very fortunate that the commander at the base at the time, General Doug Stone, had served as the CEO of different businesses before. So he knew exactly what I was talking about. I don't know if anybody else would. Fortunately, he helped me get my first contract. And so the first contract involved, working with a platoon of Marines, embedding with them, and then trying out all different kinds of exercises to see if we could target those specific processes critical to executive function. So we didn't want to target parts of the brain that were damaged, which a lot of programs do. We felt that with neuroplasticity, in other words, the amazing capability God gave our brains to change from stimulation, we could stimulate the brain to improve executive function. Now, probably the best part of the deal was the only base they could find for me to do this was in Hawaii. So,
what a shame.
But, when you're embedded with a bunch of, it was really cool experience. It's like Boy Scouts on steroids, right?
Oh, I bet.
Embedded with these guys, and we're out in the ranges, and wonderful, wonderful guys. But over 3 months, we tried to develop the exercises that would target executive function. Now, to do this, it was under the auspices of, the Marines, the government, right? So we had a control group and the trainee group, and we did cognitive skills testing before and after of both groups. Well, this group was significantly higher afterwards in the cognitive skills test. But more significantly, I asked for the worst platoon to work with, because I thought, if we're going to help anybody, let's help the worst guys. Yeah. You guys had tried to commit suicide. They were failing a lot of their pre-deployment objectives. and they just really, really in trouble. A lot of post-traumatic stress disorder because they lost 16 guys a cycle before. So 3 months later, the battalion commander said it was the best performing platoon in the battalion. And then the next month, when it went to their final pre-deployment training in California, 20 Palms, the instructor said it was the best performance you'd ever seen. So that was really cool, right? So, and changed these guys' lives. And so then it just kind of spread. It spread to Marine Special Operations. So we got into special operations. We trained SEALs, snipers, pilots.
I love that.
You can imagine. It was very, very cool. And it was basically because our brains work the same way, the program was pretty much the same no matter who we worked with.
Yes.
About 7 years ago, we migrated to the civilian sector. And so now professional athletes on one end and business people, doctors, everybody, high performers on one end. But where I'm really proud is on the other end, people with depression, brain trauma, learning disabilities, even cerebral palsy and Parkinson's. We've been able to make really significant improvements.
That's amazing. And what I love is you are living out that definition of creativity, which is something new and novel and useful. And you've combined it to create this platform. And you basically took what we think of as the brain, and we think, oh, it's just spontaneous. There's no rhyme or reason to how we think. And similar to what people think of creativity, oh, it's a muse, or it's just inspiration that you just happen upon. And you systematically showed that it's a process. And yes, and habits, that's why habits work well, because when you form a habit, you speed up your brain to not have to think about that one pathway. So therefore, you freed up your neuroplasticity for other ways. And you're basically helping kind of that whole system work much more efficient. And that way, these people can use their energy for other things and other newer experiences. And so it's beautiful.
Exactly. In fact, it's the term that neuroscientists use for that unconscious processing is a zombie system, right? Because zombies, right? They want to kill you, but they're not thinking about it. So
yes.
We'll get a kick out of that. But you're right. And when we offload processes to a zombie system, it does, right, exactly right. It's like what you do. You create people be more creative, right?
Yeah.
So more creative, you're tapping into that part of the brains that you might not have been using before, and now you're using it, and it's just amazing the things that can happen.
Right. Because likewise, as you think, I'm sure as all the people that you've worked with, we get into habits that maybe don't serve us very well. And we just assume that, well, this is how my brain works. This is what I have to do. And like when you open up that other parts of the brain they haven't really tried or benefited from, and you show them that, look, we can make you work so much more better and optimized and have enjoyment out of your life instead of depression, anxiety, and so forth. I think that's great.
Well, and it's funny because, one of the things I love about this, I've trained probably several thousand people in the last 10 years. The feedback I get is always different, right? So yes, the quarterback, his stats go up. Yes, marksmanship, they shoot better. But a guy I worked with recently, I really enjoy. He was a financial analyst. And he hired me to go through the brain training so he could do better at work, more efficient, because he's very busy. So I worked with him on a Friday. On Monday, I got an email from him, which was sooner than I expected. He goes, John, I got to tell you what happened this weekend. I ran through your exercises Saturday morning, and by noon, I'd already accomplished more around the house than I normally do all weekend. And my wife told me that now she notices I've focused on her when she's talking to me. So you just made my home life.
That's amazing.
better, right? So, you never know what's going to happen when your brain is faster and more focused.
Yes. Well, and I would like to even hypothesize that that's what modern medicine tries to do when we treat ADD or ADHD, but we do it with a pill, and it's not always the most, efficient or healthy way. And what you're doing is using their natural resources and saying, hey, we can help you focus without using, anything. Right.
So that's so exciting with that because you're right. We're just using the brain. We're targeting specific areas of the brain. We're making them work hard so they change. And then focus improves, attention improves, as you said. So anything and without drugs.
So I have to ask you the $1 million question. Do you do the brain training exercises yourself?
I do actually. So it's funny. So we homeschool my daughter, and so she's always, for a while, I've been doing it before school starts, right? And I said, man, I got to do this, right? Because you know what they say, those who can't do teach, right? But I love it so much, and so I know when I run through a few of the exercises before I play basketball, for example, I'm more focused and I play better. But we've actually started a habit. So my wife, daughter, and I, every morning when we start our day, we always run through some of the exercises together.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah. That's cool. It's family brain training at its best.
Yes, exactly right. In fact, I just presented at our homeschool group like last Friday. And it was a lot of fun because we had,
Cool.
instead of just like one type of group of people, we had parents with their kids doing the exercises together, and it really was a lot of fun.
That's awesome. And you almost describe what some might say is a flow state, right? I
Yes.
mean, like you're that selflessness, timelessness, effortlessness, they just sort of go into that state. Would you say that people can get into flow state quicker the more they practice these brain exercises?
Yes, in fact, it's interesting. That's almost an exact quote from a neuroscientist that was in one of
Ah,
my classes once. It was so funny. So I did this public class, and I knew this neuroscientist was coming because a friend invited her. And all the time we're going through the demonstration, right? Like you experience it, and I see her like thinking, and she's getting kind of fidgety. I'm like, uh-oh, she's going to nail me on this, right? And she was so excited afterwards. She said, what you're creating, you're optimizing system 1 and system 2 thinking. If you've read Kahneman's book, Thinking Fast and Slow, so system 1 is, unconscious and fast, and system 2 is the slower, more conscious. You optimize those, so you're creating flow state, and the longer you practice it, the more that, that manifests itself.
that
So
is so
yeah,
cool.
absolutely, which is cool. That's why athletes in particular, it helps them get into flow state. Yeah.
Yeah. What I like is that you're giving them a method that works, and it takes a lot of the rest of us just to stumble upon our own flow recipe,
Yeah.
and
Right.
so in Right Brain Rescue, I give the participants tools for them to experiment, to
Right.
try their own way to get into flow, because we're all a little different. And what's interesting is it's so unique with each of us, but also can change and be dynamic. Do you ever experience flow? Like when's the last time you had your own like
Well,
non-brain training flow?
yeah. So timing, this is not a setup, but I play basketball twice a week, and so I just before this, I came back from playing basketball, right? And I always do we did the exercise together as a family this morning. I do some before I play, and I had flow state when I was playing. I was, rolling
Nice.
passes, making my shots, and it was like, and the guys were telling me that they know what are you doing differently. So that was another reminder that I have to do this, right? It's funny. The Loyola Ramblers, who went to the Final Four this last year, I actually worked with the team back when they lost 5 games in a row. So they haven't had a losing season since Final Four. But I remember that the thing that was most important to me was after about 3 weeks after the initial training, I texted the coach before a game. I said, make sure you remind the guys to practice. He goes, I don't need to. They're doing it on their own anyway. So I knew
Wow.
that they were getting value out of it, right? Because they were practicing before the game and
That's
before.
awesome. Do you think it has to do with a little bit of it quiets down that negative self-talk, with at least for performance, elite athletes or musicians or anybody that's a
Yeah,
performer. What do you think? I mean, why do you think that it works so well in that group?
I think one of the things that happens is it kind of removes the self-talk, the
Mm.
negative self-talk. So one of the things that happened, again, this neuroscientist, Sherry, was very helpful because she was explaining a lot of what went on in the brain. I just do this, right? She was explaining what happens. One of the things that happens when you anticipate a task that might be a little bit more challenging, it releases dopamine, right? You feel really good about it, and you feel good when you accomplish it.
Yes.
And so the program is designed to every time you do it, it's a little bit harder, right? So, and then you feel good because you've accomplished something. So confidence goes up, and you start um, that those ruts in your brain going positive instead of negative.
Love it.
And also, as you mentioned, because you're processing faster, you don't get so overwhelmed,
Hmm.
and so your stress isn't there. You're just free to do more thinking, creative thinking, and so forth at the same time because you're not inundated with data saturation.
That's wonderful. I almost would liken it to like a more active version of meditation, because that's what meditation does. It's just sort of you disconnect from that thinking
Yeah,
part of your brain, that
right.
prefrontal cortex. And the more you do it, the faster and easier it is. And you're able to do it right in the moment and disconnect from any emotional responses that might be not serving you, like if you're in a stressful situation. And I love it. You're like doing this active part of that same premise.
It's so funny because it's exactly. So I've had people who do meditation, take my training, and they exactly did. They call it active meditation.
Ah, wow.
Yeah,
That's
I'll give
funny.
you credit for that, right? Because
Right.
rather than trying to, tune out everything and relax, and so when your brain is faster, it kind of naturally gets that way, right? So the things that were stressful are not stressful anymore,
Yes.
and you get that same kind of meditative state.
That's wonderful. So what do you do for, okay, you mentioned basketball, and not many people would say, oh, basketball is not a very creative thing. Yes, it is, because you've proven that you can actually affect the way you perform and the way you are in the sport by training your brain. What other hobbies do you have that you feel are creative or using your brain?
Well, probably, I mean, I love what I do, right? And so this is kind of my creative outlet because every person I deal with is different.
Hmm.
And so we have, it's art and science, like everything
Hmm.
else, right? So the science is the exercises we've designed and they work different parts of the brain. The art is always adjusting them to the person I'm working with or the team that I'm working with. So we're always targeting the areas where they're struggling. And then they get the faster benefits.
Wow.
And so it's, and I mean, it's amazing stuff. I have a client now who's a policeman in Philly of all things, right? And he, poor guy, he's working hard. He's law enforcement. And
That's
he really
stressful.
asked
Yeah.
me to work with him because one, there's always some post-traumatic stress disorder. But the other thing is he has to do these reports. After anything, policemen have to do all these reports. And his supervisor kept telling them they were wrong, right? So I said, okay, let's make our goal to get you a compliment on your report, right? So after just 2 sessions, he goes, I got a compliment on my reports. And he actually went ahead and he made a checklist so everybody can make better reports. I mean, he's just taking the whole thing off in a whole different direction.
Oh, wow. That's
So
fantastic.
yeah, so that's the kind of stuff that I get to hear from people, right? Where we help their brains.
That's awesome. So tell me a little bit more about, you offer it it sounds like in more of a group and contract setting where like an organization can hire you for these training exercises,
Well,
right?
well, yes and no. So actually, most of my work actually is remote via Zoom and
Got
FaceTime.
it.
So I can work with people all over the world. And so typically individuals or small teams, we work that way. I've been doing more speaking at conferences for larger groups. And then companies sometimes will just have me come in, like work with their sales team or their executive team or
Gotcha.
their developers, anybody, any team. There is a kind of an extra benefit when you do it with someone else. So when you do these exercises, you're focused and you make your brain change. But when you do it with someone else, you become very aware of that other person, what they're doing at the same time.
You're right. There's a synchronicity.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. You're kind of syncing because
Hmm.
one person might be a little bit faster, one a little bit slower. They have to sync, which means they have to be aware of each other, but they can't listen too intently to the other person because if the other person makes a mistake, they'll make a mistake.
Yeah.
So it really helps with selective focus. So teams are, I mean, another story, I have tons of stories.
I love it. Keep going.
So I worked with an executive team at an insurance company a while ago. And, so it was great. They enjoyed it. The CFO of all people said it was the best program ever for his emotional well-being. But I got a call about 2 weeks later from the HR director, and she said, well, we just had our quarterly budget meeting that normally lasts several hours, and everybody hates each other, before we're done. They're storming out, whatever. We just finished this one after your training, and we were done in 90 minutes, and everybody's saying kumbaya.
Oh my gosh.
So,
Okay, I'm
so
going to vote for you for president. That's what it's going to be.
oh man, if I could work for Congress and the president, it'd be great. But what they did, and I encourage companies to do this when they go through the training, is to make it part of their culture.
Yes.
So they would start every meeting with about 5 minutes of the brain training. So everybody's focused and engaged, they're laughing, and they're ready to tackle whatever they need to tackle together as a team.
I love it. You're hitting on exactly what a culture is, right? And that comes from the top down, creating that culture, that it's a culture of innovation, a culture of sharing, a culture of being, authentic, right? And that's the goal, I would think, for any company. But sometimes companies get stuck, just like hospitals, just like the whole medical system right now. The culture is one of automation, of just getting everything right so insurance will pay for the ticket, and that's what's burning out the doctors and the nurses, because there's no more innovation and creativity and authenticity that goes into your doctor's visit. So from that top-down culture, that's what we're hoping to do, is show, that each organization should have some kind of program in place to help their staff, utilize their brain to their best ability. And whether you call it creativity, whether you call it optimization, it's all just about brain, brain power. And I would wonder, so would you say how many sessions do you usually work with a client?
It's a good question. So it all depends on the client. So usually after the first session, we have a feel for what we're going to do. Typically, we break it up into sets of 5 each. And we use different exercises. So the first 5 we use the one you experienced. So it's basically we're working on focus, faster thinking, and we make that incredibly harder. So, I mean, it's amazing after even 1 or 2 sessions.
It's exhausting. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. You couldn't do when we started, right? Because your brain
Right.
changes incredibly fast. One of the changes we're trying to make here is we're trying to increase postsynaptic receptors. All that basically means is there's more receptors jumping across the synapses. So we're increasing the bandwidth of the brain. So you think faster. And it also stimulates long-term potentiation, so you actually learn better and learn faster, remember better. So that's the first set. We then add another set of exercises, which is actually kind of fun. It's actually a puzzle we use. And so the goal is, I always start by having someone trying to solve the puzzle on their own. And we typically solve puzzles or problems we've never seen before, kind of trial and error.
Yes.
And so it might take 5 or even 10 minutes to solve the first one. But then we train them on a process that applies to anything, break it down, think it through, and execute. And so after the training, they can do any of the puzzles in 10 seconds or less.
I love it.
And that applies to report writing. It applies to meetings, right?
Yeah.
I mean, because your goal is to have all these pieces visualize mentally where they're going to have to come together to accomplish the goal, and then execute that unconsciously as a zombie system. And so efficiency goes up tremendously.
That's amazing. I love it.
Yeah. It's great. And then some people, it's funny. I have this one client. He's a high-powered asset manager down in Austin, and he goes, "I'm not going to practice this. I want you to work with me 3 times a week for half an hour of really intense training." And he goes, "I want you to work my brain just before the point of failure."
I love it.
So 3 times a week, I push him for a half hour, just really, really intense, and he loves it. It helps him in all of his life. But it's almost like a workout for the brain.
I wonder, with all your experience, what is your thoughts on mental block? When people have a creative mental block, or they're just sitting there trying to accomplish a task and they have mental block, in what I've read, it helps to disconnect, to go for a walk, to activate that zombie or default system of the brain, let it come alive, because usually we're stuck in our prefrontal executive thinking. Right. So do you have you seen success that they have less mental blocks, or they just know how to deal with them? Or
yes. Now, I would always recommend go outside and get a walk. I mean, that is the best thing for your brain. Our brains really change from interaction with our environment. And when you're out, all of a sudden you're the smallest person in the room, right? And it allows you to relax. But the discipline of this, one of the ways we do this exercise is called the speed drill, where you go as fast as you can. And it's interesting. Traders and athletes, so they'll run through a speed drill even a couple of times. It only takes about a minute until they feel themselves totally focused and thinking faster. Because if they have trouble going through it, their mind's wandering, they're blocked, they can't get through it.
Yep.
So they'll use that to overcome what you're talking about. So if they've got something they got to do, they'll run through, they put everything aside, run through a speed drill until they get it fast and focused and their brains are kind of charged up. And then using that momentum and that dopamine, whatever, they go right to what they need to do and they get it done.
I love it. That's great. It's like you're hacking the system. You're almost like an upgrade, make sure you download this into your brain. It's like brain 2.0. It's great. Right. Oh my gosh. That is amazing. I'm so glad. And I am excited to see where everything goes, because I think this could be useful for everybody. Any industry can benefit from having their brain work better and faster and be more neuroplastic. Yeah, right. Except zombies, right?
Yes, except zombies. Yeah. That's right.
How ironic.
That's right.
Well, John, tell me, where can we find you if people listen and they really are interested in learning more and they want to maybe even work with you? How can they contact you?
That'd be great. Thank you. So the website is combatbraintraining.com, and there is a place there where they can, request more information. Contact us. It'd be great if they mentioned they heard me on your show. It'd be awesome.
Great.
They can also email me directly, and it's just john@combatbraintraining.com.
Awesome.
And I'd be happy to send them some information talking about setting up a program. Again, the kind of the benefit is we can do it via Zoom or FaceTime. So
that is great. Thank God for technology for that.
Yes,
right?
amazing, isn't it?
I know it's one. Thank you so much, John, for sharing your story.
Oh,
It is definitely going to resonate with our listeners, and you are exactly living out what we're doing in Right Brain Rescue, which is teaching people that neuroplasticity can be very healing, that you can use your own creativity to help you fall back in love with your career and live your best life. So if you're interested in learning more about Right Brain Rescue, please head to rightbrainrescue.com and you can get your admitting orders today. Until then, have a great day and stay creative. Bye.